Hey, everyone. I'm Dan Whedon, and this is Unleashed the Podcast, our live stream, which, as you know, if you've been paying attention at all, that means I have an incredibly cool guest. I'm actually going to put us on this gallery view here so you can see me and you can see my friend Aaron Schmookler from the Yes Works at the same time. Aaron, I'm going to be right with you with probing and great questions because the things you do are pretty cool and I want people to know about you. Everybody, if you're listening live, thank you. If you're listening later, thank you for that. You can catch every podcast, never miss one. Go to the platform that you like. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music. We're ubiquitous. Wherever you find your podcast, Unleash the Podcast, and Dan Whedon is there. So please subscribe. Listen, I've got a very, very cool guest today. Aaron Schmookler of the Yes Works works with companies around employee morale, employee engagement, and overall, you're going to find out if you work for someone, you can actually still have fun. I think we're going to talk a little bit about that. Aaron, welcome to Unleash the Podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Dan. It's always a pleasure to talk with you and to talk with the folks who trust and care for you. So thanks for extending the trust that they have in you to me.
So listen, what I want to do is have you probably more adequately than I just did, share a little bit about what you do. And when you do that, I want you to add how you came into that, because you were on my other podcast and you shared a cool story. So I'd like you to do that again here.
Well, I don't know what story I shared with you then, but I will say this. What we do is we stride into battle with business leaders to help them improve communication and collaboration on their team. These are folks who really believe for real that their clients are that their teams, their people are their greatest asset. And then the fact of humans comes in, and we're difficult. We're difficult to work with. We're difficult to understand. It's difficult to understand what motivates us. It's like herding cats to try to run a team. And so we help the team rather than just the leadership. We help the team come together, communicate, and collaborate effectively so that they are like the neurons in a brain, all talking back and forth and really well and healthfully connected.
So, and that's great. I appreciate that's a perfect segue into what I'm going to talk about, because you're really, when you talk about humans, the story that you told, I think, if I remember correctly, was that, you don't have to be an employee of somebody and have the drudgery of feeling, oh, I got to go to work. Mm-hmm. You can actually enjoy it. And I think it's important for CEOs and business owners to know that your most effective performers in your business, those employees, if they're happy, if they're having fun, if they enjoy coming to work, even if it's from home now, right now, we'll talk about that. But if they're having fun, it's just going to be a whole better situation. Would you agree?
Yes and no. I'll tweak it just a bit.
Cool.
If people are effective, working hard, well supported, and have at least a modicum of autonomy, then they will perform well and they will have fun and feel fulfilled. And so they won't be looking for other work. They'll stick around.
There you go. And that's really important. So listen, what I want to jump into is something that has been on the front page of everything to this year's 2020. It's obviously the pandemic. It's obviously COVID-19. And one of the things that happened almost overnight, which I think really caused a lot of challenges, is that people went from working in offices and stores, in factory, wherever they were working, and found themselves working from home. Now, some of us worked from home before. You and I both worked from home. but those teams of 5, 10, 15 people, all of a sudden are finding themselves on Zoom or on Teams or whatever it is. Can you
Indeed.
talk about this accelerated push into working from home and what challenges the managers, the supervisors, the team leaders, and the CEOs have?
Man, I mean, that's a huge question. I'll start well, let me ask you, listener, right? If you're out there and you think you have this working from home, leading from home, communicating from home, or remotely in any way, if you think you have that dialed in, raise your hand. So those of you who have raised your hands, I can't see you, but those of you who have raised your hands, one of three things I think is true. You either are fooling yourselves, you're lying to me, or you didn't understand my question. There is no having this dialed in. And in some ways, I think about it kind of like my studio here, right? This is my office and my studio for podcasts like this one, and the studio in which I'm creating content. And I have been working for 10 months on my lighting and for 10 months on my sound. And within the first week, I had it pretty good. And every week, or at least every month since then, I've done some small adjustment to make it better because I still don't have it dialed in to my satisfaction because I have high standards for what I should sound and look like professionally. Similarly, I mean, if you think the sound and lighting and sounding good and looking good on Zoom is difficult and complicated, which, by the way, if you think it's simple, think again. But if you think that's complicated, getting a team dialed in remotely, let alone in person, right? I mean, that is tremendously complicated. So if you think you've got that dialed in, then I suggest you think again. So now I'll address your question a little bit more directly. One of the things that I've heard from leaders is, I don't know whether I'm getting my 40 hours worth. I don't know whether I'm getting what what I'm paying for, and that's a red flag for me. What I suggest to those leaders who have told me that is, forget your 40 hours. That's not the world we're in. That's not the world we were in before. And now actually you're getting a wake-up call because now you're being forced not to think about it that way. If all you need is a butt in a seat, okay, you can think about it as far as 40 hours. But if what you need is actually a work product, then that's what you need to be thinking in terms of. And it's difficult. It's a difficult shift, I find, Dan, for people to make, that they think, so what I'm suggesting is, here is the set of tasks. Here are the goals that I need Jennifer to complete. And what I find is that people say, okay, but what if Jennifer completes those goals in 30 hours and then there are 10 more hours? How do I know that I'm getting my money's worth? And because this is how I see that it's so difficult to shift this way of thinking, is that there's nothing else besides employees that we pay for this way. Right? If you think about all of the SaaS services that you pay for, like I pay for my CRM and I pay for Zoom, right? I pay the same amount no matter how much I use Zoom. I pay the same amount no matter how much I use my CRM. What I have for the money that I put in is the functionality and the readiness, right? So, and I can see you've got a question, Dan. So why don't you jump in?
Well, and I didn't want to interrupt, but what you talked about is a 1950s factory mentality.
Correct.
That says I'm going to clock in and then I'm going to clock out, and that's me working, and that's what I'm going to be paid for. And to your point, there's plenty, and you probably know this better than me, there's plenty of research that showed you might have had employees sitting at their desk, quote unquote, in air quotes, working, while they are shopping online, looking for a job online, looking at their phone, playing words with friends, or whatever that is. You probably weren't getting your 40 hours anyway, you know, for whatever. And we'll talk about some of the things that you talk about that might help that to begin with. But the reality is that the toothpaste is out of the tube. Moving forward, you have to think about results, right? You have to think about what are the results that you want to gain from your employees, regardless of if it was 40 hours or 30 hours or 20 hours. Correct?
That's exactly right. And I think this is one of the things that had people resistant to allowing their folks, their teams to work from home, is the sense that I can't babysit them anymore. And I got news for you. If you think you have to babysit your people, that's your biggest problem. So that requires you to either work on yourself and figure out why you're such a control freak. And I say that to you folks with all the compassion in the world as a recovering control freak myself. Or you have to figure out, why are you hiring people that are not trustworthy? And what is the environment that you need to create in order to make people trustworthy? This makes me think, Dan, of my experience in high school, where my teachers all communicated, you all better not cheat. We are going to watch you like hawks. And if you cheat, you are going to fail. You are going to get a 0 on this quiz if we catch you cheating. And it was a game to us, right? Every single one of these very, for the most part, truly honest and ethical peers of mine, we all cheated. In large measure because the teachers turned it into a game by challenging us in that way.
Right.
Then I went to college, essentially the same demographic of people. And at the college, the policy was, during an exam, the professors were not even permitted to be in the room. And we had to take our exam. And at the end of the exam, we had to say, I neither gave nor solicited aid from anyone else. I did this on my own, essentially.
Right.
And we had to sign it. Not only did I never see anybody cheat, but my roommate, whose name was Dan, the best man at my wedding, he was on what was called I think it was called the honor board. And so all of the cases of cheating in the entire college came through this board for assessment and adjudication. And he saw almost no cheating in 4 years at college. So there is something about telling people, I trust you, you are trustworthy. Hey, will you do what you're honor bound to do, please? And getting them to commit to that makes people trustworthy. And there's something about challenging people and communicating to them that they are not trustworthy that makes them not worthy of that trust.
Let me ask you this, because I think that I've seen information about what I'm about to tell you happening which is the opposite end of the spectrum. There may be employees out there who are spending more time actually working to their detriment, because it's very easy, as I'm sitting here in my chair on Zoom, so to speak. You can get stuck here doing this all day. You could go without taking breaks, which you're sometimes mandated to do. You can go without having to move around. And all of a sudden, you might find employees who are burning themselves out for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Talk about that.
So we're all familiar with the law of diminishing returns, right? Which says that the more you invest, the better you do up to a point. And then that the return that you get on investment tends to plateau, right? So if you think about how much you pay for your car, right? If you can buy an old used clunker for $1,000, or you can go out and get a used car for 10 grand. And the difference between a $10,000 car and a $1,000 car is huge. The difference between a $20,000 and a $30,000 or a $30,000 and an $80,000 car Huge. Then you go from 80 to 100,000. What's what is the return that you get for that extra 20 grand? The more you spend on your car, the less return you get per additional dollar. Well, in this circumstance that you're describing, it's not just a law of diminishing returns where the returns plateau. This is a law of diminishing output. So if people work too much, it's not even just a matter of fatigue. You actually will see that the output drops off, the total output for the week will drop off. That there is a sweet spot at which you are getting not only the best return for their time, you are getting the best return, period. And, that's less than 40 hours a week, as it turns out. It's more around 30 hours a week.
I'm going to transition. That's really good. Thank you, Aaron. I'm going to transition into 2021. Let's get the heck rid of 2020. If you're to look in your crystal ball a little bit and say to anybody who's listening or watching, Mr. or Ms. Employer, the vaccine is coming. We know it. It may take 4 to 6 months to do what it's supposed to do, but by this time, by December of 2021, we're thinking there's going to be a shifted normalcy. But again, we're talking about the toothpaste in the tube. I don't think we're going back to the way we were before. There's probably some measure of hybrid, some measure. What are some of the recommendations you would have for them in a transition back or a transition to new?
This is a wonderful question, and as I am often wont to do, I'm not gonna exactly answer it around the transition, at least not for starters.
Okay.
And instead, I'll say, learn from this experience what there is to learn, regardless of what happens. I don't know how good a prognosticator I'm going to be around this. I have my thoughts about what's going to happen over the course of the next 3, 6, 8, 12, and 24 months. But I will say there are some lessons to learn. One, the thing that so many people were afraid of, so many employers were afraid of, letting people work from home. A lot of folks have discovered that is not nearly so scary as we thought. So that's one of the things that there is to learn. People will work from home when they work from home. Second, right now, while we're all remote, good leadership is just straight up not good enough. You really need great leadership right now, because great leaders they're delegating purpose. They're delegating results. They're saying, this is what I need you to accomplish. And then they're stepping back and allowing people to make their own choices, to employ their own judgment, to use poor judgment and learn from it. And it's those leaders right now whose teams are really not only thriving personally, but also performing exceptionally well. And they're also incredibly agile. So no matter what happens in the coming days, weeks, months, years, they're going to be able to pivot much more quickly than leaders who are delegating tasks, and leaders who are asking, am I getting my 40 hours worth, instead of, am I getting what I need from this employee? And so that's an incredibly important lesson to take from what's happening now, is that good leadership just straight up won't cut it right now. Great leadership is what it takes, even to remotely thrive right now. And if you can take that learning forward, then you are going to really see, as the economy recovers and as people come back to work and as people leave their homes, you are going to see that you are going to be at the front of that rising tide instead of lagging behind it.
Aaron, let me ask you this. Leadership, when you talk about good or great leadership is not necessarily intuitive. My experience is that people who are great leaders, whether it's business, sports, nonprofits, the military, they've all acquired skills and leadership development from either mentoring or from books or from videos or
Yes,
from whatever. In fact, that's part of, I think, what you offer as well is some leadership development.
absolutely.
What type of leadership development needs to happen now from the top that says, you're my leader, Aaron? This has been unique. You probably weren't ready for it, but I've got some ideas for you that will help you become a great leader in these times.
So you said leadership is not intuitive, and I think that's incredibly important. Uh, I'm an acting teacher, right? Like I'm a theater director. That's what I am. Like by training, that's where a lot of my focus has been.
I think I didn't know that. I think I just learned something new about you. That's pretty cool.
My wife, but yeah, that's where I have a master's in fine arts in theater directing.
Wow.
My wife is a voice teacher and a violin teacher, and what we both have talked together about a lot is that these things that don't require physical tools, people think they should be good at it, right? So somebody walks into an acting class and it's very difficult for them to put themselves in a learning frame of mind because they either think they're great at it or they're ashamed that they're not great at it naturally. And when my wife is teaching violin, she finds that people are willing to learn and find it easier to learn. It's an easier lesson to sell than the voice lessons because
Wow.
we think we've either got it or we don't. That if we don't, that there's some shame in it because there's no external tool. We know that we need to learn how to use external tools. But we don't give ourselves the grace to understand that the internal tools are also a matter of learning. And so again, I maybe answering your question.
No, that's fantastic. I'd never thought of it in those terms. And
But I
leadership, obviously, is, as you're about to answer, leadership is one of those things that people might think, well, I'm either a good leader or I'm not.
and and then there are the folks who think, like some of my acting students, I'm good at this, and my people suck. I've got news for you folks. If you think your people suck, if you think your people are frustrating, and I know that lots of you love your people and you're still frustrated by them because why can't they get it through their thick skull? That's not them. That is a sign of a gap in your leadership. And I don't say that with any judgment. It's not that you're bad. It's that you conceptually, fundamentally misunderstand what it is to be a leader. Right? Some of the people who have the highest opinion of their own leadership say things to me like, "Yeah, my people know that they're doing well if they don't hear from me." And that's just scientifically, demonstrably false. If your people don't hear from you, they don't assume they're doing well. They assume that they are in a dark hole in the ground where they do not know which way is up. Because that's how we all feel in the dark. That's how we have evolved to feel.
It sounds like it's worse, Aaron, than being, maybe being given negative feedback. It sounds like it's probably worse.
Absolutely. So now you've got me going on the research, right? So the research says that if you are in a job interview, you will sweat more, feel more stress, and be more exhausted after the interview if you are interviewed by a blank-faced person than if you are interviewed by somebody who very clearly is not picking up what you're putting down. They do not like you, and they're shaking their heads the whole time and going, I don't know. That knowing where you're at, even if where you're at is not where you want to be, is much less stressful than having a lack of information.
Wow.
So, and
here, let me ask you this, because let me ask you this, Aaron, and I'm going to have you back again. By the way, we're going to have you back. The lack of information, has that been exacerbated by not If you're
man.
listening on the podcast, you can't see Aaron's physical movement
Yeah.
on that. It hasn't been exacerbated, obviously, by not being in the same place.
So let me ask you, Dan, right? I mean, you don't have a boss, just like I don't have a boss. Do you know as well now where you stand with your clients and prospects as you did a year ago?
Well, I think I do because I've reached out to him. I talk to him more often.
Great. So you are doing the work to make sure that this lack of connection is bridged by connection.
Right.
One of my clients is the CEO of a software company you may have heard of. And one of his salespeople, so this is not somebody who reports directly to him, but a skip level report, came to him and said, "Hey, my numbers are down. My numbers have been down through this whole thing. Am I okay? Am I in danger of being fired?" Now, just imagine what it takes for a frontline salesperson to go around their boss and go to the CEO, who is, by the way, the scariest person in every organization, no matter what,
Right.
and say, "Hey, are you thinking about firing me?" And he did that because after however many months that he's been behind in his numbers, understandably, he went to the CEO because he could not bear the torture of the lack of information any longer. He has been tortured every day. And to his credit, the CEO was asking me, why did it take him so long to come to me? Am I being more scary than I need to be? And what I was able to help him see is not only are you not being too scary, you are so little scary compared to his manager that he skipped over his manager and didn't ask his manager directly.
Wow.
So what your job, Mr. CEO, is to do is to ensure that your managers are telling everybody that they manage where they stand. Nobody in your organization should ever wonder whether they are a star, whether they are on the bubble and in danger of being fired, or whether they are doing all right and you'd like to see them improve. Everybody every day should know where they stand specifically and where they stand generally, because otherwise, I promise you, they are tortured, and a lot of what could be their what's the term that they use? Essentially like their optional effort.
Right.
Is going to wondering whether they're going to be able to pay their mortgage next month instead of focusing on what more value can I add to the company. And it's not because they're bad. It's because that's neuroscience.
Wow. So listen, Aaron, will you come back next quarter? I want to have you back again. Would you come back and do another podcast?
Absolutely, Dan. And the reason is, there are two reasons. One, I like you. And I enjoy
I know where I stand. I know where I stand with you. I'm good on.
Absolutely. And I enjoy talking to you, right? And you know where I stand because I keep coming to you for my insurance, right?
There you go.
So I enjoy these conversations with you. And secondly, you asked me to tell the story of how I got into this business. You maybe can hear my 6-year-old daughter out in other parts of my house right now. I want her to have a work environment different from the one that you and I came up in, Dan. I want her to come into a work culture where people say, "Hey, it's great to be here on Monday. Happy Monday." And where people say, "Hey man, good work all week. Enjoy your weekend. You've earned some time away, some time just applying your brain differently, applying your efforts differently, not because I can't wait to get out of here, but because I did it this week."
Yep.
So I want her to inherit that. And the only way that she's going to inherit that is if all of your listeners embrace what we're talking about here. And the real grace is that as I work with business leaders out there to change their work culture so that my daughter will inherit something better than what we came up in, we are changing people's lives. We're making people's work lives better. We're making people enjoy not just the weekend. People aren't working for the weekend. They are working for the joy and the grace of it. And then also, so not only are we improving people's lives, but we're also improving the results that companies are getting. And all of that just makes me happy. So for that second reason, I'm also happy to come back.
Well, all of a sudden, lover boy and everybody's working for the weekend just popped into my head by hearing that. But that's my own issue now to deal with. So, how can somebody's listening to you, somebody's watching you? Aaron, how do they get a hold of you?
So you can find us at theyesworks.com. That's our website, and you can. There's lots of content there. A lot of if you're intrigued by the way that I think and the way that I talk about leadership, which is, by the way, a set of behaviors that you want throughout your organization, not just in people with the rank, right? But you want leadership all throughout your organization. If that's something that you want, go to the Yes Works. Feel free to consume as much of my thinking and our thinking there as you might like. And I'm also the only Aaron Schmookler on LinkedIn.
Aaron, thank you very much for being here. We'll certainly have you back. Everybody else, thank you for also being here. If you want to keep hearing more great interviews like the one we had with Aaron today, make sure you subscribe. I told you all the places you can do it. Give us a nice high rating of a 5. If you're listening to this and you're not already on the Facebook page, follow us on the Facebook page at Unleash the Podcast. For right now, again, Aaron, thank you very much. I think the whole concept around employees and happiness is really important as we're in this time of year. So thank you for being here. Everybody out there, please be well, be healthy, and above all,
stick with Dan.
What's that?
Stick with Dan.
Stick with Dan. And by doing that, you will be unleashed.
Yeah.